welcome everybody. I am super excited to have you here. I'm going to take up the shortest amount of time possible so you get to hear from Lau. Most of you know me, just in case. I'm Angela Shelton, CEO of Answers for Associations. We are here to support all of you. We're building a powerful network of people that get to tap into the brilliant ideas of professionals in our space, like the wonderful Lau today. So for anybody who hasn't met him in person, he hails from the US. He is what I have been told is the Belinda Moore equivalent of the US. So for everybody in our group, you know Belinda. So this gives you the perfect persona of what you're going to.
It's an aspiration for someday.
Aspiration. I love it. So, Lau, that's it from me. I'm going to hand it over to you. I'll be in the chat box. Let's get you to take us through today's session.
Excellent. Greetings, everyone. So lovely to be with you. I have so much that we can talk about today. Thanks to all of you who filled out when you were signing up the questions that you'd want us to address. I've incorporated those along the way. I want to make sure we get into some models of change today. But ultimately, I'm hoping that although I have a good deal of content, that at any point I can drop the slides and we can also discuss so that as we're thinking about how to lead our teams through change, that it's something that is best done through mutual support. We know that being a leader unto itself is not easy, and especially if you happen to be in that executive seat, it's even more isolationary. And so we want to make sure you have a network and a community to work with and through. We're going to start with just to see how you feel about change to start. And so a quick first poll, how much do you like change, right? And just click in all the way. Looks like we got 1 to 10 on here, right? So 10 changes my life. I seek it, I live it, I love it. It's your middle name. All the way down to change. Please, no more change. I do not want any more change. Just your natural disposition towards change will be interesting to see. Just so I know how much we have with us today, if we have change agents, change advocates, change runawayers, all those pieces of it. That was a technical term. It does look like we have a few more that are in the upper than the lower. So people here that hopefully see change as a reality and they go towards it. And so let's just try the second one. And what is your perception of the rate of change in our world? A 10, could the rate of change be any faster? All the way to, no, it's a nice easy pace right now. Things are pretty calm. We're surfing a very calm sea. Nothing's going on. All things are normal. We don't really see that much change. This is an exercise in theory, not in the reality of what I'm seeing every day. Uh, so interesting who gave a 2 to that, because my expectation was that where the voices are coming in would be where they come in, right? Is that we are seeing an ever increasing rate of change. And that's not surprising based on the world that we're living in. I think the quote, although it's amazing to me that it's from 8 years ago at this point, actually from the Canadian leader in 2018, Justin Trudeau, that the pace of change has never been this fast, yet it will never be this slow again. Right. And if I was going to capture in essence why our conversation today is essential, this is probably why. As we think about the systems of change, the culture change, it's not going anywhere. And so either we learn how to navigate it in a healthy fashion for ourselves, for those we lead, and for our organizations and their critical missions, or we'll get left behind. As I think about the world of nonprofit organizations, some of the intersects working with so many organizations, the economic uncertainty is really challenging across organizational business models, from whether or not individuals will pay dues to whether or not they'll travel to events. We see that workforce capacity and the challenges therein are really whether it's through a generational lens, whether it's through a ability to get the new skills you need, and as well as whether you want to use the letters of AI or other shifting member expectations. It does seem that what once was true about why loyalty was formed is not necessarily the platform anymore. All this factors into more complex governance cycles that change is challenging our leadership, that what they were hopefully coming in and the impact they wanted to make during their term of service. Well, in a rapidly changing environment, the idea of those longer term impacts takes a lot more intention. And we know the decision cycle itself is accelerating. That ultimately is translating to a shift that I'm sure you all are seeing. Traditional selection of the top leaders of an organization so often were based off of expertise, skill sets, and experience within the profession itself. And whether you're talking about a for-profit company or a nonprofit association, that's really started to shift, that we're seeing growing priorities of emotional intelligence in our C-suite. Especially as we think about change, there is no less of a need to manage. But if I was going to identify a shift I see happening, there seems to be a lot more clarity in organizations that who has to be in the top seat are the ones who can lead, and they can hire those who can manage. In this time of rapidly shifting environments, it's the people side that are starting to step forward. As we think about the difference between managing and leading, right? Managing change, which is one piece of it, when we're talking about this essential element, just to do a definition, managing change is about the structures of it. So we're talking about managing change. We're talking about the plans and the timelines, the processes, the theories that you use, the milestones, the tracking. These pieces all are critical so that there can be roles and responsibilities, that everyone understands the system they're functioning in, and that achievement is clear. With that being said, having the system of change only is insufficient to actually creating an environment where all those going through change are going to feel connected and able to persist, subsist through it. And that's where we get into the leading change aspect, right? The leading change is that within it, there has to be a clear narrative and through line of meaning about why the change is important, of trust that is built in those, the team that's going to go through the change, that there's attention paid to the culture. The process itself provides structure, but it's people that drive the process. And so leading change is about the human element of it. Leading change and managing change are two different things. Both are needed. You need the structural component, you need the cultural component. But it is very difficult for one person, for any change of significance, to try to navigate both of those rivers. Right? In the day-to-day change, when you're leading a team, you have to have a foot in both lanes. But if we're really talking about organizational shift and organizational change, you have to know where your own tendencies lie, where your strengths are, so you can lean into those strengths as a leader and then supplement those strengths with the side of change that perhaps may not be your inherent place to start, right? And so, how do you balance that in the team that you build? Two sides of a coin as you think about going into this, that hopefully, as you do some internal reflection, you can think about what role you want to play. So to understand change, we're trying to think about how to enter into this topic. I want to just introduce to you two models of change so that if you were to have in your mind a significant change that your organization could face, and everything from I've seen, we once had components or chapters or regional groups, and we're thinking about doing away with them, right? Or we once had the traditional membership model that was just the professionals. So we're thinking about taking industry partners and making them members as well, right? Significant changes. Whatever the model is that applies to your organization, I want you to just have that model in mind. Now, I'm going to leave slides for just a moment because there's a wonderful, for the first model, actual site that I love how it shows it. So the first model I want to show you is called the Kubler-Ross model, right? And this inverted bell curve, if you will, is the frame of how individuals experience change, right? That we are used to, we hold on as humans with both fists tightly to the world that we know. We crave and we live on stability. When things are stable, then the things that got us to where we are can get us where we need to go. The strengths that we have formed are places that we can have continued excellence. We really like stability as humans. Inherently, change makes that which is stable unstable. And so typically, the first thing that happens is when you hear a change is about to come, there's some measure of shock or surprise. There's some measure of, is the world as I know it about to be thrown upside down? And from there, depending on how change is introduced, the truth is that it could go to denial. Angela, can you give me a thumbs up? Can you see the inverted U? Okay, good. I had an alert that wasn't showing. Right? So denial, this idea of disbelief that you say it's coming, but I don't. Sometimes if we just keep our head down in the stand, if we're like an ostrich, like it's just going to pass us by, right? Leading to frustration. Nope, it's really happening. And even that's where, if it's not well managed, anger comes out, right? The idea that you're taking away that which has let me succeed. I know how our database works. I have 50 different workarounds that let me function day to day. You're telling me I'm going to need to learn an entire different process, but I can quickly answer the questions now. Why are you doing this to me? And depending, although these are evenly spaced, if there isn't some turnabout with progress being made, that can lead to depression. And by the way, in this change curve, this is where you start to see abandonment, right? Where people feel like this change is interminable. We're never going to get to the other side. I don't have the fortitude to make it through. I don't have the inner strength. This is where I don't want to get into work the next day. As leaders, right, we can't stop this decline, but what we can do is to try not to make it as steep. And what makes the change reaction there not as steep is how quickly we can get to some of the incline pieces here, right? How quickly can we get to the pieces of experimentation that start to demonstrate that we are open in this change process to not everyone being an expert right away? The idea that through change, we're going to try new things and that failure is not something you're going to be reprimanded for, but it's going to be something we're going to learn from so we can gain new expertise. That experimentation brings with it recognition of those who are willing to experiment. That from experimentation, you move into decision, learning how to move into the new situation, that you're able to see the experiments are working and I'm gaining new skills until you get to integration. And that's really where you've gained those new skills and you're starting to create that plateau once again, which is what would come afterwards because you've gained the expertise. As you think about an individual's journey through change, this low to high is something that perhaps you've experienced, or in the model you were thinking of as the experiment, is something that could make sense to you. Now, just by nature, I like to not only subsist with single experiments or single models. And so I just want to share a second one. Yeah. So the second one is probably one of the most well-known ones in the nonprofit world. It's from Cotter. It's an 8-step model, right? And this is really if the Kubler-Ross, which actually comes from some studies in grief, uh, indicates what that curve is like. This is how to better navigate the curve. And what we're really focusing on here are the systems piece. We're going to get to the people piece as well, but I thought a grounding in the systems piece would be a good place to start. And so in this 8-piece model, you'll see similarities, but the questions I've given you that if you get these slides after will help you reflect on how we navigate it, right? The first is that you want to create a sense of urgency. Why is this change critical? Why is this change critical now? Are there going to be opportunities missed, right? Change just for the sake of change is not a sufficient enough imperative to get people to come along. So what's the urgency that's driving this is the moment? Once you have that premise of change, the idea is that you want to build a guiding coalition of those that will lead the change alongside you. That not only the individual who's been charged to lead the change has to be the single voice, but where you can have representatives across the segments that will be impacted by the change so that they are a team, that they can be champions, they can be listeners, then that's where you build starting a central cohort that will bring others along as they listen, guide, inspire. Normally you would get a question of, well, shouldn't the single person doing the change have the vision? The single person who's starting the change should have the reason and the imperative. But the vision of where you're going, how the future will be different than the past, how the future will be different than the present, is always going to be richer in nature if it's not just a single voice, right? So building that inner circle first will give you multiple aspects on the narrative that you want to tell and change so you can get to a common goal and the strategies to get there. And from there, with the inspiration of why you're doing it, why now, what the better futures is like, this is where you want to start to recruit. This is where you want to look at those and for those that are willing to be first adopters, that are willing to be the experimenters, that are willing to be the ambassadors of it. They may not know yet whether or not the change will completely work, but they are willing to go on the journey. And you, my friends, the ones who answered in that 8, 9, 10 of your willingness to change, I'm guessing that you were the first ones that are often picked out to be along, being like, I don't know how it's going to turn out, but let's find out. Let's see what we can do. With that team, with that growing team, you can then identify the barriers that are going to keep you back from a successful change and see, are they structural barriers? Are they cultural barriers? And then to enable, hopefully, many cohorts to work through how to remove those barriers, how to get past them. So it's not only on a single person or two. You certainly want a critical coordinator that's leveraging and quarterbacking the whole change, but you don't want one person to be responsible for removing all the barriers. It's too much of a lift, right? This is why that you want an ever expanding cohort of those that are looking to have a dynamic leadership role. And the thing that fuels successful change, you may begin it from a strong fueling point of vision, but the ongoing fuel comes from accomplishment. If the only measure of success you have in change is the endpoint, is when you reach the top of that curve, then you're not going to get past, right, the low point of that depression, and we're never going to be good again. You need to have structured out in your model what progress looks like, because progress builds momentum. And then when someone feels like they're succeeding, right, they're getting a little bit better, they can see that we are getting a little bit better. That can build enthusiasm, that can build steps ahead. And that speaks both to the process and the person in what they experience. Once you start to do that, then it's about sustained acceleration. There usually hits this point where people are just tired of going through the process, right? Once you get through the shock and the initial what's going on, you may get some initial wins. There's usually a place of establishment of new parameters and new norms that you start to want to just like skip that stage. Don't skip the stage, right? You don't want to stall, lose momentum, but you have to build stability through the exercise of some repetition and the strengthening of practice. And once you have the new behaviors and structures, then at some point you have to no longer tolerate that which once was. I've seen it time and again, especially if we talk about AMS, right? Like association management systems, selection and integration. I see it time and again. The new system is selected, it's put in place, the training is done, everyone goes to the 2 days of training, maybe for like 2 weeks they're using it, and then the first hiccup is hit, and they start to slide back to the old practices they have because they know how to get around the system. Instituting change means that the start, like when you launch the system, is the start. It's not the end. You got through putting something in, but it's sustainability that indicates the success of change. So those are, and you can read books on this theory of change, right? But in terms of the 8 steps of leading change, that's going to be, as you think about the Kubler-Ross down and up, this is what's going to get that and make that hopefully not as steep as a down and easier to get back out of it. Those at least theories of change as we go through it. Just to be transparent, if you're going to think about adapting this, the pros of the Cotter model here is that it's very clear in the structure. Leadership has a very distinct role to play, and short-term wins give momentum. The cons are that the structure is pretty linear. It's hard to jump if you want to go to a future step without going through each one. And you have to design your how for each of those, right? The model demands that you actually build architecture within each stage. And what it doesn't address are the personal barriers, whether it's exhaustion, whether it's resistance of how we navigate the people. So the pro con, if you consider the model. All of that being said, I wanted to start with structure because we crave stability, right? It's our happy place. And so no matter the model you use, no matter the theory you apply, if you're going to approach regular change, then having a transparent structure of how your change happens gives the kind of stability that makes it easier to move through it. Change without a transparent structure is chaos, and chaos inherently saps our energy. It saps our desire to achieve. It saps our ability to feel like we can achieve if we don't see where we're going and how we're going to get there. So that's before we get into your questions. That is at least the structural piece when it comes to change. I'll pause there just at that moment to see, are there any questions around those structural pieces before we go into your two or three of the questions you asked, and then we can get into some fun there. Any questions about either of those structures? Going once, going twice. All right. If not, then I'm going to go into. So you gave me a solid dozen questions. There was some overlap. I've picked three questions to really focus on. And one was, and I tried to pick some human elements, really, at least in the first two in particular. And the first was just addressing that we don't all approach change from the same place. And so what I'm going to do is I want to do just a quick self-assessment with you if I can. So I'm going to tell you what to do, but this is your moment either to open up a little Word document that you can write numbers down, or if you have scratch paper, but I'd like you to just to do the self-assessment with me quickly, if you don't mind. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you four short sets of statements. And in each set, there's going to be three statements. And I just want you to rate yourself on a score of 1 to 5. 1, you strongly disagree. 5, you strongly agree, right? Don't overthink it. Just go with your first reaction. And hopefully I talked long enough that you got your markers, your crayons, your whatever it is you like to write numbers down with, but you're ready to go. All right, section A. Remember, 1 is disagree, 5 is agree. So on 1 to 5, I feel energized when plans change unexpectedly. This is not aspirational, this is actual. Be honest with yourself, right? This isn't what you hope you react, it's how you actually react, right? Do you disagree that you never feel energized when plans change unexpectedly? It actually drains you. To you agree. Actually, when plans change unexpectedly, I really like it. It gives me the opportunity. 1 to 5, where do you fall out? Number 2, new systems feel more like opportunity than risk. How do you rate yourself? Number 3, I prefer starting and adjusting rather than waiting for perfect clarity. So that score 1 to 5, add that total. It's just 3 numbers, right? And write the letter A and put that little total number next to it. Let's go to B. B 1 to 5. B, I focus on protecting what already works. How would you rate yourself on that? Right? 5, I am like the keeper of that which is works and I protect those things. All the way down to a 1, I'm ready to throw the process out the window and start a new one. 2, I think first about risks to members and volunteers, right? Before I think about potentials on the other side, I think about the risks first. And 3, continuity matters more than speed. Don't overthink it, 1 to 5. Your 3 numbers, add them up, and that's your B score. C, I need clear information before committing. 1 to 5. I ask detailed questions about impact and process. 1 to 5. I preferred structured plans to experimentation. 1 to 5. Okay, that's your C total. And then we have just one more to do. Just hang in there. I promise the math quiz is almost done. D, I notice how change affects people emotionally. Right? 5, you're a strong empath and you feel it. 1, you're like logic led and don't really read it when someone's not doing all right with it. 2, I worry about fairness and inclusion. 3, relationships are more important than timelines. Don't overthink. Give yourself a number and add it up. I am not looking at the screens to see if you're using your phones to use your calculators, but it's only three numbers you have to add up for each letter. And so hopefully you have your totals for all three letters. And so there's actually within this model like four change archetypes. And whichever number rose to the top for you, right, that's your primary archetype. And the truth is, for some of you, you may have gotten similar numbers, right? You may actually have foot in more than one space. But these are the four archetypes, and we'll just go through quickly what they are so you know what type of inherent change strengths you bring to the table. So the A types are explorers. You are the ones that are energized by new possibilities. You see change as opportunity before you see the risk. You like to move quickly, experiment early, right? You're comfortable learning. You're the ones who are going to be my change leaders, right? You spot innovative options, and you don't want to miss it. And you want organizations to avoid getting stuck in the past. The downside, right, to you big change agents, you who we love, is you may move faster than teams can absorb. Because if you're out front, who's behind? And you could underestimate the emotional operational impact of change because you don't feel it. My stabilizer friends, stabilizers like to protect what already works and carry a strong sense of stewardship for members, right? They ask whether change is truly necessary and sustainable. And so you're the ones that are going to keep mission and continuity visible. You're going to protect member and volunteer trust. So you're going to be ones to make sure that like we're not reckless. It does mean on the other side, though, that you could appear resistant or slow momentum. You might even struggle with some of those new models. My analyst friends, you're the ones that need information before you commit, right? You like to think in systems and impact and dependencies. You want to map the journey. And so we're going to be data driven because of you. You're going to find the blind spots with you that you'll help us design the clear processes. You're not resistant to change, you're resistant to risk, right? And so you just want to see how we're mitigating the risk. That being said, with your actions, you could delay the action, always seeking perfect data, and you risk valuing precision over progress. And then my D friends, my connectors, right? You are the ones who worry about the people, the emotional, the relational climate. Uh, you notice who's feeling left out or overwhelmed. And so you're the ones who within the team are building the trust, the psychological safety. You can keep everyone engaged. You can translate change, the process, into human language. That being said, you're my ones that most often like to avoid conflict, uh, right? Because you absorb stress and you risk slowing necessary transitions because of it. I'm going to keep talking, but a little bit of fun if you want to play. If you're willing to share, put in the chat which one of these you fell out as. Be interested to see. If you're willing to share, I'm not going to read out your names, but you can see for each other which one did you fall out as. Put it on in the chat. And I'm going to keep going past the survey this time just to keep it for timing wise. That's okay. We'll put it in the chat instead. So here's what's important about the archetypes, right? Is it's important not to try to like label people, but it's important to try to understand. Like we have natural tendencies. If you think about it and you are an explorer and you go to a stabilizer and you're like, change, change, rah, rah, change. And you're like, why aren't you excited about this? Right? The natural disposition isn't there. Right? If you are an analyst and you're like, where's the data? How are we mitigating risk? What's the process? How are we going into this? And you go to a connector's like, well, right, how do you feel about this? It's not that any of that is wrong, right? But my point is that what's critical around change when it comes to the human element and when it comes to about not being wrapped up in the depression that come with it and the energy drain, the overwhelmed, is often because we're trying to translate messages meant for another one of the archetypes that we have to somehow deal with. Messages of change that are going to go to a stabilizer is not going to resonate with an explorer. Messages of change that are going to go to the connector are going to seem like a waste of time to the analyst. And we leave it up to our teams to translate it. I would also say that each of those four archetypes have their place and their role. A healthy change team actually has all of it. because they each have a role they play. It's when you're missing an archetype that's someone that either you're going to have a worse process, right? Or you're going to have someone who's trying to dual role it, which is exhausting. And so if you're going to structure a team for success, right? If you go back and do this little quick, like this isn't even the statistically significant version. This is the quick and dirty version, right? But how can you best leverage and give assignment to people on your team in a way that speaks no matter the system, no matter the theory, but to the people, right? For the explorers, like give them the ability to help design the pilots, let them experiment, and pair them with the analysts so they can understand the risks and consider them along the way. Like let those two work together. The stabilizers, right? Let them name what is most important to preserve. Inherent with change typically is some preservation of stability. What needs to be that? And there'll be a really good eye in their risk reviews. The analysts, if you let explorers try to do a roadmap, first of all, good luck and Godspeed. Second of all, an explorer, right, wants to go out there and do it. The idea of road mapping would be like fingernails on a chalkboard. But an analyst who gets to map it first to try to understand where we're going, right? That's interesting. And then you can work with them and say, what's the good enough to start threshold? Let them be in on that so you don't feel like you're moving too quickly. And the connector, like if you're thinking about the team, you're caring about the people, you want to make sure we all get through this. Connectors are amazing nexus points for making sure everyone's on board, like translating this to the volunteers and what's going on. The change communications from a connector, especially if you pair them with an explorer, right? The explorer communicator is going to be the excitement. The connector communicator is then going to translate that excitement to what are we all feeling about that. Those aren't singular in definition. I'm just trying to give you an example as we think about the human element of who you have on your teams and how we navigate change and how we don't get drained as much, is to recognize that change is not one size fits all for every person. I'm going to skip the scenario and I'll come back to it if we have time. But when you get the slides, I put in a scenario, right? And I put in what would the different things do in this scenario? If you didn't have archetypes, what would the chaos look like? And then with the archetypes, what better way would it happen? So if you get the slides after, you could see this scenario. My point is, right, that if you're going to lead change where we started, right, whether it's the Kubler-Ross, whether it's the Cotter, 1,000%, my managing change, friends, you need the structure. You need to have how you approach change. And if it could be a structure your organization adopts as its routine, then people are going to understand how you approach change and there'll be stability within the change structure itself. That is not enough. You have to also understand your people, not just the process, right? The magic isn't in making everyone think the same. It's in designing the table so difference creates better decisions and creating the space for all of those elements. Number 2, preventing stress and emotional load. If we're going to be really honest about the stress of change, so much of it comes from uncertainty and from pace. It comes from feeling our identities at risk, right? Change is not just technical work, it is emotional work. And honestly, the exhaustion we see often is not from the tasks, it's from the not knowing, it's from the relearning and feeling that the effort is invisible. If the only thing that's visible is the outcome and not the effort, then you're not actually able to see that you're making progress until you get to the end. That's exhausting for people going through change. And so if we look at the toxicity that often can be encompassed in change, right, what I want to point out here is that there's toxicity if there's not structure, right? There is toxicity if you don't know what you're supposed to do. But in the assumption around this topic, which is the mental health load, I want to move outside of structure, right, to where else toxicity comes from, right? The cognitive load, if there is not clarity of what are the priorities any of my people have, and is it too many for them to know what actually is if everything is a priority, nothing is. If I have the time for 4 priorities and you've given me 20, I will burn out, right? The emotional load. I was the leading producer for my team the past 4 years, and you are breaking the system where I lead. Am I going to be in last place now? Is my worth to the team going to be gone now? Who am I in this? Right? There's an emotional load there. And the relationship load, right? The relational load. Well, with this change, what is the hierarchy? Where will I fit in? Will I report to different people? Will people report to me? And am I going to be moved to a different team? What if I don't like my new supervisor? Right? The not knowing piece of it. If you address only the tasks, which by the way is the cognitive load, you miss 2/3 of the problem. And so you have to reduce load through design, not just willpower. And these are just some things to think about. People are like, well, we'll just give a good inspirational speech. You need the structure, not just the inspirational speech, right? Oh, like urgency, everything's needed now. What's the rhythm of urgency? And where are people giving the space to refresh and recharge? Motivation, if I could just inspire them to go. And also boundaries of mental health and physical health. So it's not just go, but going at a healthy pace. And reassurance of, oh, you're doing just fine. The difference of that between saying, show me what the efforts are you're making so I can recognize those. Just some high level, if you were going to like go through change and have reminders for yourself, these are leadership reminders. What I want to give you are 4 practical levers that are within your control that when it comes to the mental health aspect of change, you could try to pull at the right moments. So the first lever is priority architecture. For any person in any moment, inherently having a limit to 3 to 5 active priorities, right? That you should be able to have it on one big post-it. What are the 3 to 5 priorities? Now, as each one is accomplished, right? One comes off, you can put another on. But if you have more than that, then you are starting to prioritize quantity over quality. Something will get missed and you will feel like you're not able to actually know what's a priority. And so part of your job as a leader is to protect stakeholders from everything now. And at least what I like the 3-bucket filter model to help that, right? And so the 3-bucket filter model means that you put everything into 3 categories. For what's on the table of priorities, what's now? These are mission critical. They have to be done this month. What to happen, the time period. What's next? This is important, but it's not now. But if you finish something from what we know today, this is what has to come next. And letting people what's coming next lets them start thinking ahead about how they will prepare for it. Is there anything they're doing now that they'll do differently because they know what's coming next? And what you don't want to miss is the opportunity for the not now, which are the good ideas that will have to come. We're at step 3. That's a good step 10. We're going to demarcate it and put it in process, but I don't need you bearing the load of step 10 right now. Even these broad buckets, right, as a filter for what is a priority, allows people to have a load that is manageable. Inherently, we like to please, especially our supervisors. There are many that won't say no out of fear or out of the desire to be seen as reliable. It is a supervisor's duty to understand what priorities their people have and to make those manageable. Lever 2 is decision hygiene, right? This is to have really clear design of who decides what. So this way, once something is decided, it doesn't get relitigated. It isn't that one person decided it, but no, someone else wants to do something, so we're going to talk about it again. Without having the structure and pace, without having the decision hygiene, it feels like the emails back. Once you get past 3 back and forths in email, it is time to stop emailing and pick up a phone or have some Zoom or find another way, right? Meetings that feel endless means you can't come to decisions. With decision hygiene, there's guardrails. You have faster, cleaner meetings. You feel leaving more engaged and energized. Number 3 is, what is your communication rhythm going to be through change? When can we expect to hear from you? And it doesn't mean that you have all the answers every time. But if you are clear each time on the answers you do have, what you expect to know next time, what you're hoping to learn from, then the reliability of the communication rhythm is unto itself a place of stability. Be very clear on what the facts are. Do not make promises you can't keep, right? But be clear on what they are. If I was going to say a clarity check-in in a communication rhythm, and I was going to give you sort of the agenda, it would be at this moment why this change matters, what we're trying to get to. So always remember that. Then, okay, what do we know it's changing? Like this is what's next in our change process. What's steady? What are we holding on to? What have we established? What's next in our focus? And where do we have flexibility? If you want a high-level agenda, right? That would be a good place for a communication rhythm. And probably the one that I would say that your fourth lever when it comes to mental health is recognition of effort and impact, right? This is the heart of change sustainability. This is where if you only recognize the outputs and the impact, then people will not have the sustained mental health to know that they are doing a good job, that they're recognized, they're seen, and they are appreciated. You have to acknowledge learning curves. Your expert is not going to be an expert when you institute change. You have to give people the chance to become experts once again. And so you have to look at the invisible work, the people who are putting in the hard work to gain expertise and recognize that unto itself. Without this, volunteers feel taken for granted. Staff equates silence with criticism, right? And so how do you intentionally put in place meaningful recognition? Especially if you are someone who doesn't need recognition to thrive. Think about the archetypes. It does not mean you don't have people who do. Keep in mind your whole team. The four levers that actually work. So as you think about sustaining mental health and change, these are four that you could pull at any moment. That's good. So the one that we didn't get to, because we're just about done, is identifying and navigating risk. So there's just one slide I want to show to you from this piece before we close out. Mainly because I would say in any change process, especially for my chief staff executive friends, I'd say the place that I see more CEOs that are at risk of getting out of sorts with their board and losing their jobs, or getting out of sorts with their staff and losing disconnect, is here. It's when you don't understand the risk tolerance each other have, and you're not communicating the right way. And so the tool I would give you is this. If you are contemplating going through change, you should have at any time the 5 dimensions of risk dashboard, and this is catered specifically for nonprofit associations, right? You take these 5 components and you make a red light, yellow light, green light, right? Green light being low risk, red light being high risk for the change stage we're going through. How do we gradate the risk? Are there operational risks in terms of our staffing, our structure, our processes? Are there financial risks? Could we lose a lot of money? Could we gain a lot of money, right? Are there let's do strategic risks first. Are there strategic risks? Will this change who is our primary audience, what we are trying to achieve with our strategic framework? Could this change actually change our mission, right? The reputational risk, everything is based upon our brand, whether we are trusted by our members, by our community. Is this change going to impact how we are known? And governance risk, will this change actually shift how we are led? What those leadership seats look like, the powers they have, right? If you come in and use this as a model to identify potential risks, it gives you a structure to have risk conversations to make sure an entire team is on the same page with what's being put on the table. And are we comfortable with that? Or are there ways to mitigate it? So from that last area, I would give you this risk tool as the last. I know that that is a lot, all to do within one piece. And so I'll just close out my last 60 seconds with some closing thoughts, right? You could have the same change, but different leadership, and it will be a different experience. right? If you have the same strategy, same resources, and same timeline, you can have one team that feels overwhelmed and another that feels capable, one that gets stuck and one that moves forward. Leadership shapes how change is experienced. Process and people are both priorities. Who is your chief change process officer? And who is your chief people officer for change? And how do they work together for the outputs and culture of the organization? It should be very clear before you start. You should recognize people for their effort, for their input if they see opportunities to change better, for their output, for what they produce, for the impact it has, and for the support they provide one another. Change is a team sport. Recognize not only who scores the goal, but those who are the players that pass as well. And know your tolerance for change resistance. Where are your lines in the sand? If ultimately someone is unwilling to change or they won't come along, that's okay. But it may be they're not going to be there on the other side of it. And the story of the change you're going to go through. You have to not tell once or twice. You have to tell it 10, 20. You have to tell it until you're so sick of telling it that you have to be like, there's no one who hasn't heard it. And then you have to tell it again. Because we have to always remember why we're doing this, why it's critical, and what the better future is we will achieve. I hit it by 30 seconds behind. But my hope is that within those 45 minutes, the frame of change from structure to process to people, that there's something within there that you're able to take back to your organization and your leadership to help your mission critical organizations navigate what is a rapidly changing time better.
Just wow, Lau. That was incredible. Are you okay, Lau, if you hang around for a couple of minutes if anybody's got any questions? Because that was fantastic. Does anybody want to ask anything of Lau? You've got 5 minutes of this incredible person and incredible insights. You've changed everything for me. I can tell you that much right now. Can't wait to get off the phone and ask Emily. So, what is your archetype? Because what a game changer. But does
Yeah.
anybody else have anything that they want to add or ask Lau? Feel free to take the mic. Anyone? You've blown them away, Lau. They've got no questions,
Yeah,
apparently.
I see lots of good. I see lots of good explorers, analysts.
Yeah.
Anne-Marie, I see your hands up.
All right. Let's give
Hi.
you. There she is.
Hi,
Hi.
Lau. That was amazing. Thank you. I am one of those people who loves change and leads change. But what really frustrates me is when there is change for just for the sake of change and there's no clear purpose behind it. How do you manage people who really are just constantly pushing change for the sake of change?
Yeah, I think you need to have frameworks and structures in place that are gates that have to get past before the organization is willing to enact a change, right? There has to be a clear demonstration of purpose, of the better future, that there's been some data-driven exploration, that the resources it's going to take are worth it, and ideally that there's buy-in. And there's different ways to frame that. For many organizations, I see that they have to start like a one-page template that if you're recommending a change of any significance, you have to start with a justification of why this change is needed, why it's needed now, who it's going to impact, what's the better tomorrow it's going to bring, and what is it going to take. And
Love
so if
that.
you don't have those thresholds in place, then you can have 20 changes going on at once. By the way, some of them may be same things you're changing, but in different ways.
Love that. Thanks.
Yeah. Leah or Leah,
Oh, hello. Can you hear me?
we can.
Oh, good. Look, just a carry on from your answer there, in terms of having a reason and a framework. My question's around AI and the benefits it has for a not-for-profit organisation, in terms of just volunteer fatigue and efficiencies all round, where you've got a board, perhaps a mature board, with a split difference. So you essentially can't really reach a consensus on taking on that change. simply because there's some resistance to progress that way. There's people stuck in doing things how it's always been done. And yeah, so essentially it's more how do you lead the senior management into taking that step.
So I think we all have things we nerd or geek out about. I'll be honest, for me, governance is one of them. So when you're opening the doors, I want to now have a 45-minute conversation with you around boards and what it means, boards who can't accept the things that we need to let go of.
Yes.
But inherently, what I would say is that what we didn't get to go through in the risk tolerance model, the 5 lenses I gave you, was that for significant change, you should also be presenting to a board opportunities to see the different levels of risk and reward, right? If there's a significant change happening, then the 4 levels of what would a high risk, high reward option be, a mid risk, mid reward, low risk, low reward, and then what happens if we do nothing? Because that's a risk as well, and the risk of stagnation there could actually be the worst. So that's one way to get them past it, is to actually not just have be like, are we going to do this, but like, what are the potential outcomes to have them see that? The governance answer I need to give you is frankly that best governance practice is that there should be heavy dialogue debate when it comes to making a decision. But then for better or worse, the structure of our organizations is that we're member led. And if 51% say this change is needed, then 100% need to support it. And if they are not willing to do that, then there's a larger governance conversation that needs to be had around what a healthy body of leadership looks like. I'm sorry if that's blunt.
No, that's great. Yeah, it's a great takeaway. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions?
And I'm putting if you want to, I know I may be a bit further away, but if you want to, happy to answer more. I put my LinkedIn in the chat if you want to connect. Happy to chat there too if you want to connect.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to share Lao's slides, and I'm going to start a petition, everybody, to get Lao out to Australia. We need to get him into our space. I mean, I cannot actually begin to articulate how incredible that session was. It was beyond my expectations of what we thought we were going to be able to share with everybody today, Lao. So thank you tremendously for that incredible journey you took us on.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, and share your change stories back. Let everyone know, what you were able to take away and what you were able to do with it. We hope it was helpful.
Oh, incredible. There goes. Somebody's joined my petition. Thanks so much. And yes, you need to get him to Australia. We're going to work on it. We'll find a way somehow. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. And Lau, again, thank you so much. We're going to stay in touch and see what magic we can make happen along the way. But everybody, go have an incredible week. And I look forward to staying in touch with everybody.
Thank you.